The trail's mostly complete, the cabin mostly complete. The drainage in the terrible area is pretty much complete, and winter's coming. I've turned my attention to cleaning up downed trees, mostly from Hurricane Ida 2 years ago. Some of them were from a bad thunderstorm 6 months ago, and some of them are because we have a pine tree beetle disease. It may take out all the big pine trees. I don't know when it stops. Anyway, all these trees are on the ground. They're all on top of each other. Actually, it's kind of dangerous cutting them up, but I'm trying to get them all on the ground. If they're on the ground, they're going to be wet and they're going to rot away much quicker than if they're in the air where they stay dry and last longer. And I can just see the kids playing underneath these down trees like forts and things, and it's just not safe and it's ugly. So I've been trying to cut them down and lay them on the ground, which means bringing a chainsaw up into the woods. I can put them in the back of the truck, but they roll around, and my big still leaks oil. Collins Husqvarna leaks oil. I can put one of them in the basket of his four-wheeler because I can get up the trails with the four-wheeler. The truckster will go down some of the trails, but not others. The truckster would be fine. I could put both of them in the back. Anyway, so you cut these weird trees. You don't know which way the tension is, and I'm pretty good at guessing, but sometimes I get it wrong and the saw gets stuck when the tree starts moving. But that's why I carry a second saw, and every now and then I get them both stuck. But anyway, this little video is a little rack I made for the back of my new four-wheeler, which I haven't really shown because it's been getting a lot of work done to it by me. And this first part is kind of sketchy because apparently, I don't know, I lost some video or deleted it or put it somewhere. I don't know where it is. But anyway, I took these old hardwood imported hardwood fence boards. I took two of them, and I planed them down, and I just laid it down on the table and laid my two chainsaws on top of it, and just kind of eyeballed. I didn't want it straight up and down because I'm trying to keep the bar from sticking down too low to the ground. So I just kind of turned the angle that I thought would look good, and I marked it. So then I don't need the chainsaw. Well, I still need the chainsaw. So then I ripped a spacer out of the same general type of wood. I wanted it kind of snug. I don't want the saw flopping around, but I don't want to have to fight with it to get it in and out. And of course, those saw teeth are very sharp and they will catch on anything. So I made a best case judgment, and what I'm doing now is ripping the board to the right thickness for the spacer that goes between the outer boards. So here's where I'm pretty sure I had some more video, but I can't find it. But anyway, it's pretty simple. Put the saws over one of the side plates. There's two side plates. They're the same, more or less the same width. They're a little bit different thicknesses because I had to plane them until I got rid of all the ugly. And I leaned the saws over, and I said, this looks good. And I had the spacer block for the middle. I knew it was thick enough so that even the chain on the bigger saw would slide into the slot once it's all glued up. And I'm using epoxy because these boards are really, really hard. And this is going to be outside for the most part. So the wider boards, the cheek boards, I rounded over an edge, and the spacer board in the middle, I recessed it a little bit. I think this is going to make it easier to stab the saw into the slot, especially if you're trying to do it one-handed, because the saw is naturally going to want to fall between the two outer boards. So when you use an epoxy, it's real slimy, and when you try to clamp it, it tends to move. So I just shot two little bitty nails in each one of these after I had it glued, and I'm just hoping I don't drill into it later or cut it with the table saw later. But yeah, I shot two little nails. I glued them all up, and then I glued the other cheek board, and I clamped them all together. Typically, you don't need too much clamping pressure when you use an epoxy. Not nearly like using a yellow glue, but these boards are a little twisty and they're pretty hard, so I put a lot of clamps on them, and I got them clamped up tight, and leave them alone for a day and let the epoxy cure. Now, like I had the spacer board in the middle a little thicker than it needed to be, I had the slots for the saws a little wider than they need to be, just to make them easier to get in and out. How much wider did it need to be? Total guesswork. I hope I have it right. And if my little sear saw ever dies and I get another one that's wider, I think I'll be able to plunge cut a different saw in there to make the slot wider. I think that wouldn't be very hard, but for now, I'm making it custom size to fit my two saws. The wide slot fits my neighbor's still, which is bigger than my big still, and I think it'll fit my son's Husqvarna. Now his smaller saw is wider than my sear saw, so his smaller saw will not fit. But yeah, making it for my two saws, I can adjust it later on, or you can make it any size you want. I could have made two big slots, but then the little saw would have flopped around, and I didn't want that. So it's best cases. I'm doing what I think is right here, but I'm not an expert at this, and I'm really not sure how this is going to turn out at this point. So I bought a four-wheeler. My bride said, get a new one. Don't get some piece of junk you're always working on. I think she was referring to the truckster. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't. It's a $10,000 purchase if you buy a new one of these. And for it to just sit out there, not be locked up. The internet knows it's out there. It knows I'm not there very often. I don't know. I just couldn't justify for the limited use I'm going to use it to buy a new one. So I did what she told me not to. I bought a piece of junk. I was working on it for a month or so. I changed the two front wheel bearings. I changed the upper A-frame bushing. I changed the start button, the key switch, the choke cable, all the back brakes, back axle bearings, back axle seals. Yeah, so it's now in fair shape except for a knock in the motor, which is probably the most serious thing. But yeah, I bought it. It was an impulse buy, and it had automatic transmission. I'd been looking for one of those. Every four-wheeler I looked at, they all ran good, but they all shifted terribly. So the yellow machine is what I got, and will the motor last? Who knows? But right now, it actually runs pretty good. It just doesn't sound very good. Okay, finally got my four-wheeler home after doing a lot of repairs on it. And my chainsaws are at the foundry, so I put some pretend chainsaw blades, cardboard. And I think my bigger saw is an 18-inch, but I couldn't remember, so I made this one like a 20-inch saw. I think the little one's a 16, but I made it like an 18 just to make sure I'm good. And this is going to go on here, something like this. One thing I kind of have to watch for is the exhaust pipe. I don't want it pointing straight at the saw blade. I just need to stick this on there, cut the excess off, around some corners. So I think I'm going to cut a piece of wood to fit up in here tight, and then glue it on the back of this, and that'll help make it like fit in there real rigid like. I think that's what I'm going to do. You'll get some measurements, and I'm going to cut a piece of wood for that. And this is bent down. I'll try to bend it up. Pretty raggedy old four-wheeler's pretty raggedy, but we'll make it. So we got another piece of the same wood, probably from the same board, and this is the skinnier side, 1.55 inches. So I'm going to rip this on a table saw, and then I'm going to cut these curves and get it in there kind of tight. I'm probably bend this up a little bit to make it more better. Yeah, okay, let's go rip. So I thought I would bend that upper bar up so it'd be straight. Turned out to be more of a challenge than I thought. There's nothing to really pry on. The whole bike is just plastic, and I just couldn't get any leverage on it, so I thought, well, I'll just jam the board in there and force it up, and I'll probably mess with this 30 or 40 minutes before I gave up. Ended up cutting a curve on the top of the little block to match the bent bar, and in the end it worked out okay. But straightening out this bar, it whooped me. I couldn't do it.
Dang.
All right, so enough of this. Yeah, I just couldn't do it.
Okay, so I cut a curve in the top. I still had the hammered in there. It's still pretty tight. And now I'll put my brace, my saw holder up here. I think I can cut it right here. And right here. Cut the length. It's just too long. And then kind of around the corners. And then come back and see if I can clamp it in place. Okay, I think this is where it's gonna go. I got it clamped to the little board that I inset in there. So I'll put like 3 screws from this side into it. Then I can take the clamps off. Then I can move it inside and take the screws off, glue it, put the screws back. And around these corners, and I'll probably do a little round over bit on everything. So I think, yeah, this is about as safe as you can be. I can't imagine anything coming up this high to bend the blades. Of course, if you back into something, you could bend the blades, but, and if the motors stick up, the motor's sticking up, they're not sticking up higher than my head, so the vertical clearance is not a problem. Yeah, pretty happy with this. So I'm gonna get some screws, screw the little board to the big chunk, make sure I don't put the screws through the slots, and take it off, do some sanding, and glue it. And then, yeah, not sure how I'm going to attach this. Maybe just with another board. It's pretty sturdy. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we have 3 screws holding the little board to the big board. Let's see if we can get it off without it moving. I think we can. Ooh, it's pretty tight. All right. Go besides gluing this on there, I'm around all these corners a little bit, just I don't know, just because, and put some glue and some clamps, and we're probably done for the day because it's in the afternoon. Yep. I just glued the cleat on the back of this thing with epoxy, and since I had epoxy mixed up, I went ahead and painted it on there like varnish. Now it's not as durable as varnish as far as the sun goes, but it's very hard, so I don't think it'd be out in the sun enough to really make that big a deal. I wanted it to be nice because I didn't want it to distract from the beauty of my new four-wheeler. Okay, the epoxy's dry, pretty ugly, but anyway, let's see if I can't get it back in this tight spot. And I'm gonna put this on the inside, and we're gonna through bolt it, I think. Let's see if it'll go back in. All right, not too shabby. I need to find, I think, 2 bolts long enough to go all the way through the big washer. And I think it's gonna be pretty strong. It's strong enough. Sure, it's strong enough. Let me go see what kind of, let me get a tape, see how long a bolt I need, and go find something. I took my bevel square and marked the line of the inside of that slope because I wanted to make sure I didn't get my hole too close. So I wanted as far out as I could, but not too close, so I put it here. I measured the same from this end and got it here. And it's no problem on this slope because this slope slopes away. So I found 2 bolts, 2 stainless bolts, 2 stainless nuts, 2 plated washers, a brass washer, and 2 stainless washers. So not too bad. We're gonna drill holes and bolt this on. Be done deal.
Just since this wood is so hard, I can really crank down on these bolts without crushing it. And if you're going to make one of these, you need some good hardwood, not white pine from Home Depot. You need some pecan or some hickory or some oak or something that's pretty hard. Make sure it doesn't fail on you.
I went next door and borrowed my neighbor's saws. He's got a 390, I think this is. Yeah, 390. This is bigger than my big saw. I have a 261. And his little saw is way bigger than my little saw. I have that Sears Craftsman, and this is a 251. So, yeah, I think this is going to work good. His bar is a little bigger than my Sears Craftsman bar. But, yeah, it's sturdy. I don't think it's going to get damaged. I can't see a branch or anything grabbing it and ripping it off. So, all right. Super happy with this deal. Now we're going to have to go work on the front basket. So, because if you got a saw, you got to have fuel, you got to have oil, you got to have drinking water, you got to have a rag, you got to have all kind of stuff. So we need a basket for the front. Going to make a little basket for the front of the four-wheeler, and this is my template. I'm going to round these corners some kind of way. Yeah, I'm going to go to the foundry and see what I got to make it with, and weld it up there and bring it back here and mount it, or try to, so I don't have to put this back on the trailer. Whatever. Anyway, this is my template. I'm gonna go make a basket. It is actually sprinkling out here. Not much, but a little bit. Man, it's been a long time. Come on, rain. Anyway, this was the day tank, so to speak, for the truckster that I think is full of rust, and it caused me some problems. I really don't know, but I was guessing it's full of rust. Anyway, I got a 6-inch section marked because I want the front of the basket to have curved sides. So I'm gonna cut this out and then cut a sector out of it to have curved fronts on the basket. So I got it cut open, and I was right about the rust. It's full of rust, so that was part of my problem with the truckster. I'm glad I swapped tanks for a copper one. So this is the section I'm cutting out from that pencil mark to that pencil mark straight up. And theoretically, I should be able to get all 4 of them out of one pipe, because this is 360 degrees, and the sum of the angles of a it's not a square, it's a rhombus or something, should also be 360 degrees, I think, but I'm going to lose some on the saw cuts. Let's see what happens. So I need 2 of them the same as this. So I squared those first 2 marks up to the top with my trusty old speed square. Now we're going to cut them. So I cut my two first pieces, and then this last piece I'm gonna just cut in half, and it should be correct. Actually, I checked it, it is correct. Okay, so my 4 fancy curve corners are done, and they're all okay. Now I need to clean them up. They're full of rust and paint, and then we're gonna put an angle iron on the bottom because it's gonna hold the expanded metal, and then we're gonna put expanded metal on the sides and then cap that with something. But next step is doing a lot of wire brushing or whatever to clean these up, and I'm not gonna film that. It's not any fun. Okay, templates on the welding table. And I got the corners marked with a Sharpie. So I think I'm gonna move the template out the way and stand my little corners up and weld them to the table. And then fit everything around those and then grind the weld off. Because man, there's so many moving parts here. So I think that's what I'm gonna plan on doing. There we go. And actually, the magnets are holding them so strong, I might not weld them to the table. We'll see. I think they're good just like that. I think I can start fitting my angle that's going to go on the bottom circumference as soon as I find some angle. Okay, I found a couple of suitable angles for the ends, and I put them in place, and I scribed underneath there with the soapstone. So I don't know why this wouldn't work. It should be the same at the top as it is at the bottom. And besides, it could be off an inch or two. It really doesn't matter because this is all bigger than the rack that's on the quad right now. So it's going to hang over a few inches. So I just need to get it halfway close. All right, so let's cut these. So my first 2 angles are cut and they fit amazingly well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little tack weld on these because when you're trying to wiggle everything into place, it gets kind of crazy. So I'm going to just put a little tack weld in the corners. I'm going to keep the magnets on here because the magnets are keeping this vertical. So get out the welding machine, put a couple of dots. 2 end angles are tacked into place, and I moved the magnets to the outside, which I probably should have done in the beginning. But anyway, I got a long piece of angle. I'm gonna cut it to rough length so it's easier to handle, clean the rust off, and mark it for this side. See what happens. So first long piece in place and tacked. And I said those first 2 were perfect. Well, they're not exactly perfect, but they're close enough for me to weld. So now I have this one more, and I'll weld up all of these, and then I'll drop the screen in the bottom. I got some expanded metal, and the expanded metal will be held up by ribs that'll be underneath this thing. So that, and then we'll put expanded metal on the perimeter and put some kind of cap on it. I'm gonna finish this today, maybe. Last piece, everything was going lovely. What is that? How does that happen? How does that even happen? I don't know. I'll patch it though. So I put the original template back together, and I marked out this expanded metal. It's probably going to be too big, but yeah, I can trim it down as we go, get it to fit right. I'm going to go outside and grind this because Debbie's working on her piece of art, and she doesn't like the noise of the grinder. So I must comply. Okay, the bottom frame is all welded and grinded, and once again, my welds are not things of beauty, but they're not going to fail either. So, and there is the bottom. So I'm going to tack this into place. I think I got it the wrong way. We're going to tack this down and then do the sides. Okay, sides are all cut and they fit. And I'm gonna weld them now. I'm gonna lay it down, like, and flip it up so I can push down with the hammer handle to make sure they're tight before I put some little tacks on them. And we'll put a cap, and then I'm done here. Then it needs paint, and I think to support, I'm gonna use wood. I'm gonna do that at home, I think. For the top, I think I'm gonna go with this 1/2 by 1/2 square tubing and split the bottom so we can go over this stuff. I'm not gonna be able to do the curves, but I can probably just go in like a 1/2 inch, and I'll just sand that so it'll be smooth. I'm gonna do one to see how it works. So I'm gonna do that medium length side. Cut it to length and then rip the bottom open or the top open, or rip one side open and see what it looks like. Okay, first top rail is in place, and I think it's going to be just fine. I ripped the bottom. The rip's not straight because I did it by hand with the grinder. The wire's not particularly straight, so it took a little fidgeting to get it to go down. But I think once I weld here and weld these corners, put a few little welds underneath and kind of make sure this is rounded off so it won't snag anything. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do on top of that curve, but probably nothing. All right, let's do the long side. Okay, tops are on. I'm gonna weld what I can and maybe bend that while it's red hot. I don't know, try to make it a little nicer. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this thing so far. And it cost me not one penny except welding supplies. Okay, I'm gonna weld. I can't weld on camera because my camera doesn't pick up welds. It just makes, you can't see anything. So we'll just weld it out. And then I'll turn the camera back on. So this is where the basket's gonna go. It's gonna have some sort of ribs under it to support it. And I may make them tapered because this thing's leaning down toward the front a whole lot. I would rather it be level. So there may be some wedge shaped, maybe 1, 2, let's see. This is a support. All this does is hold the fender up. So we really only have 2 main supports. Well, there's a support here, so I'll probably do 4. Let's do 4 boards from front to back, sticking out far enough to catch this front edge, wedge shaped enough to get it up level. Yeah, and then if this light works, I don't know that it does. If this light works, I don't know that it does. I need to kill it because when you're riding at night in the dark, it shines back at you off of this thing. My son's basket is like that. When you turn on the light, you're blinded. It's got 2 more lights down here. Don't know if they work, but that's for a future project. Okay, I'm gonna bring this inside because it looks like we may get some rain. Please, please, please rain. And get a coat of black paint on it. So I've ripped up 4 strips of cypress. This is going to support the basket. The pair in the middle, this pipe is it's not level, but this is level this ways and this is level this ways, and it slopes down. So these 2 are going to be cut the same, but these 2 out here, the rack's all bent up. That's like way down. So these will have to be cut separately. And when I get them all to fit on the bottom, I'll put a level line across the top and cut it so it'll be a big wedge. And obviously they're way too long. This will be some finicky cutting here, but we'll figure it out. The 2 middle pieces clamped together. I drilled a hole, hopefully right at the joint, which should give me a semicircle to go over the pipe. Now I just need to cut this little square for this square tube the same depth as this, because these line up somehow or not. No, it's a little bit higher. Get to cutting. All right, with the support board in place and this little straight edge clamped, if I put the level on it and made it perfectly level, now the machine's sitting level because it's inside, it came out a little short of what I wanted. So I leaned it down a little bit to get it out here. So I'm gonna scribe that line. I'm gonna cut this one and this one the same, put them in place, and then transfer that line over to this one when I get this one fixed. I clamped a little scrap to this brace so I could drill a half a hole, and I did the same on that end. And now, if it fits, not too bad. That one's off a little bit. So let me trim that on the bandsaw. Maybe I can get that to fit just right. Okay, two middle pieces in place. Put a level across. It doesn't have to be a level. It could just be a straight edge. I got a mark here. And I got a mark here. So now I know how to cut that slope. So all of these will be flat. May not be level. Doesn't matter. They just need to be flat plane. So I can attach the basket to it, to them somehow. Don't know how. All right, looking good. So I got them marked to length. I think I'm gonna cut them straight with a little radius on the bottom. Sand all the corners around a little bit. And I guess paint them, and I probably should paint the original rack too because it's pretty nasty. Originally it had a bar that looped around here and came to here, and I cut that off. My son's store-bought basket has that, and it just goes through the bottom of the basket, which means if you have a pencil or a knife or anything, it's going to fall out. So I intentionally cut that out, although it might have fit underneath here. Nah, probably not. All right, well, let's cut the length and let's do some painting. Well, first rainy day we've had in a long time is the day I picked to paint existing steel. Used my least favorite tool in the world, which is a wire cup on a grinder, and got the old rust off mostly. And then I painted, and since it's been raining all day, it's still very sticky. I was going to come pull the paper off, but I'm not going to mess with it. So tomorrow we'll pull the paper off, and I'll mount the basket, and we'll be ready to move the yellow machine to the country. Some black. Yesterday I got the I've got the chainsaw bracket back on, and I've got these installed strictly with paint, so that's not adequate. I think I'm going to drill a hole here and bolt it because this is the only flat piece of metal. And and put 4 of these things. I've got these self-drilling, self-tapping, and I will countersink them so they'll be flush. Let's see if that'll work. Paint's still really wet, but I want to get this thing on there. Okay, those worked really well. They got a good bite in here and sucked it down super tight. I got sawdust all over my sticky paint, but oh well, this thing's never going to win a beauty prize. Let's put the basket on and screw it down. So there's 8 stainless steel, I guess that's a sheet metal screw, and 8 trim washers. And I screwed the basket to the wood, and the wood is screwed to the steel. The steel is bolted to the bike, and man, super stoked. This is going to be really, really nice. In hindsight, I probably could have made it a couple inches bigger. It wouldn't hurt anything if it stuck over the front of the machine, but yeah, this is done. The back is done. The only thing I'm going to do now before I haul it to the country is put in a plug to plug in my water truck electric pump. So I'm just going to hook up a wire to the battery and put a fuse, and it'd be good to go. Okay, I got a clever hint, I think it's clever, for these battery terminals. This is the terminal bolt, and it screws into a loose nut that's captive in there. So when you take the bolt out, the nut falls to the bottom. Now, theoretically, the bolt is long enough to grab the nut and start again when you go to put it back. But since I'm adding another terminal thing, it won't reach. And I had the same problem with the ground terminal over here. So what I did was I put the screw in the nut, screwed it up all the way, and I've got some oil-based clay, or some clay, or you could do it with dirt, you could do it with anything, and I'm shoving it in those little holes. So then when I carefully unscrew the bolt, the nut won't fall all the way to the bottom because it's going to be sitting on the clay. And then I'm hoping I can get it started. And I know I got the ground one started, so I'm hoping I can get the positive one started and solve the problem. Once you get it started, it's good. It can't turn in that little box. But man, if these bolts are only a 1/4 inch longer, and of course they're metric, so I didn't have one to fit, or I would have cut a longer one. It's raining outside. My cat doesn't like rain, so she's wigging out. Alrighty, so I got a plug on this end, and I got trunk. I didn't even know I had this thing until I started working on this little piece of wood back here. And it still works. It's got a bungee. There we go. Yeah, okay, so I can now pull the water trailer and squirt water.